Hello and welcome to the EUF Elite Invite Preview Show. I'm Steph Patso with Benji Reese and Hannah Pendlebury. We're going to break down the pools, talk about each team, and give a little bit of expert opinion, if you're part of the patron, at the end of the show. We'll start off here with Benji Reese. Benji, tell us about the tournament format here in all three divisions, please.
I am super hyped because this is the cream of the crop, the tip of the top. 8 teams in each division, 2 pools of 4, so you play 3 pool play games, and then onto quarters, semis, finals. So 6 games over 3 days, so everyone should be right at kind of peak condition for it.
Excellent. So this is one of the very first tournaments we get all 3 divisions playing with the same amount of teams. It will be beautiful and seamless. Hannah, we've got tell us about qualification, and then I think there's a few interesting points that come with qualification here.
There are. So as per the invite sort of series of events, at Spring Invite a couple of weeks ago, we saw the top finishers for each of those events getting a bid in a wild card affair into the European Championships will be in Wrocław later this year. So at Elite Invite, because it's elite, the top 2 finishers will get themselves automatic qualification at the end of the season. But in terms of the participants of the Bern tournament, we're going to see, of course, some people who've already snagged themselves a golden ticket to the European Championship finals for this season. So in the women's division and the mixed division, Disconnection and Shout, of course, having topped the Spring Invite events. It's not a case of the bid going to the 3rd position place at Elite Invite. It will actually be the 2nd place finishers at the respective Spring Invite events that happened. So if you're Lemmings to Lemmings, for example, you're going to be hoping to your lucky stars that you get maybe a top 2 finishing of Reading Ultimate and Disconnection, because that means that's an automatic. You've got a fewer spots potentially coming out of with obviously the qualifying through. The regions will still have the same allocation of bids that will be coming through, but certainly they'll be looking for that to happen because they had quite a tight final loss at the Spring Invite. So, and in the women's division, we'll of course be having Shout, who've got that spot, and then it will be East Block, who will be the better for having a extra bid through if they happen to get themselves in those top 2 spots, which I think they've got a decent shot of doing potentially, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, excellent. Very interesting indeed, where last tournament's qualifying impacts this tournament qualifying, no double qualifying, and the potential, as Hannah expertly revealed, for past finalists to steal those secondary spots. It'll be very interesting to see. Let's kick things off in the mixed division here. Benji, why don't you run down the pools first, and then we'll talk about the teams in each pool and see what we think about how this will, what we think, and maybe how it'll pan out at the end.
I will gladly run down the pools for you. Pool A, we have GRUT from the Netherlands, Deep Space from the UK, Puke from France, and Mosquitoes from Austria. And that leaves in Pool B, Reading from the UK, Disconnection from Germany, Smog also from the UK, and Sesquidistus from France.
Well, here we go. Let's start at the top there, Benj. GRUT. Tell us a bit about GRUT. I've never even heard of them.
Right, I mean, I think pretty much until anyone knocks them off the perch, they're always going to be the favourite in Europe. But it's a little bit different, GRUT, than we've seen in the past. There's no Benor, Walt Janssen, Yanni Janssen, Lola Dam listed on the roster. So, getting other players stepping up into those big roles on and off the pitch as well. Can they make the transition? And will Alan Mawson's shirt still be the most creased item of clothing on the planet?
Well, I can't comment on the shirt.
Trust me, you'll know it when you see it.
Okay, as far as this roster goes, I think the one thing, and I maybe had a misleading there, I do believe Walt Janssen will be there. The rest of those players, we don't see Lola Dam. That is a huge loss for GRUT. We don't know where she'll be. We hope she's back and playing. We miss her on the fields, but not on the roster right now.
I believe she's having a well-deserved season of rest. Not something that ultimate athletes do very often, taking a full season, but I believe we might not see her at all, but she'll be back, I'm sure.
Well, we certainly hope so. Ben Ort, of course, flew across the Atlantic playing with the DC Breeze in the AUDL, had his debut match, which was a cracking affair. They lost on Universe Point. But less about that and more about our tournament. So Groot, as Benji says, top of the hill. Can someone knock him off? I guess if ever, they're primed for the picking.
You would probably think so. You're all right. Actually, the Walt is on the roster. That's an oversight on my part. Otherwise, they haven't necessarily brought new blood in, with the exception of Filip Molnar, who's Slovakian but has been studying out in the Netherlands. Was playing for Force Electro at Worlds last year. So really excited to see him get a chance to kind of present himself more to the ultimate public.
Excellent. Any last words on Groot, or shall we keep whipping through here?
There is one person I'm surprised not to see, who I believe is on the squad for GRUT this season, and that's Elisa Tizik.
You are absolutely right. I did see that on their social media roster presentation as well. And
let's talk about new blood, and that is quite a, well, certainly not a rookie by anyone's estimations, but that's a serious ad.
That is a mega ad. Okay, Benj, who's up next?
Let's move on to Deep Space, who are the second team in Pool A. They've kind of been there or thereabouts in recent years. They've been a finals contender at UK Nationals, and they've made some European semi-finals in the past. But you're kind of wondering, what do they need to do to take that next step and consistently be in the deeper stages of bracket as tournaments, I think is my big question around them.
Well, what it looks like they've done is pickpocketed some of the best open and women's teams in the UK. Not to say they've stolen them away in terms of anything funny business going on, but there are quite a few very tasty additions. Some Clapham faces on there. You've got Axel Amala, who's quite handy, quite a big unit. You've got Hannah Yorworth coming across, playing for GB Women this season. You've got, I mean, I could go on. There's a bunch of new people to Deep Space this season that are looking very handy. They've got a very strong base already, so it should be pretty fun to watch them play.
We'll keep an eye on them. I also notice. Go ahead, Benji.
I was going to say it's about integrating a lot of the new players into kind of new systems, giving players new roles, and just an early season tournament like this. Obviously, you'd love to tie up the EUCF berth nice and early, because the mixed division in the UK can be a little bit topsy-turvy at times. But I think for them, even if they don't go out and, seal that spot, if they can get some of those connections clicking early season, that's a big win for them.
Get some cohesiveness. I also noticed last year's Elite Invite co-commentator of mine, Ali Thomas, on there, of course, and Elliot Cook, an Australian who was playing in Brisbane for a very long time, Mammoth. I think he's been in the UK for a couple years now, but happy to see his name about the Deep Space roster as well.
I think the other one thing I would say is anyone who watched our coverage of EBUCC last year will remember that they have Spanish goal machine Alvaro Iturmendi. So has anyone found a way to stop him scoring yet? That's what I want to know.
To be found out. Keep your eyes locked on ULTI.TV, of course. Let's keep working our way through this pool, Benji.
Puke are next up, out of France. Steph, you might be a little bit better place to talk about them than I. Obviously, you've got that French connection going on. But for Puke, they're a team that doesn't necessarily have big stars, but finds a way to get it done.
Yeah, they've been, qualifying for EUCFs and European championships for 4 or 5 years in a row now, at least. They're amongst the top of the pile in the French championship, but we're not in the final this year. That went to somebody else who we will feature soon. They have a little bit of an aging leadership, I will say. They probably won't like to hear me say that. But between Odermond and Alice Saint-Marco, and in fact, they're missing a handful of players that are rostered, that I see on this roster, but my insider information lets me know that Pauline Lambolez won't be there, Elise Fretinier won't be there, and the wily veteran Saint-Marco herself will be injury resting and not competing. So they're going to be a bit shorthanded. I think they're going to have their hands full this weekend. Hannah, any further thoughts on the Parisians?
Well, now that you've said about the fact that they're not going to have quite a lot of their key experience individuals cleated up and actually playing, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking yourself to an elite invite championship and saying, okay, we might not snag one of those 2 free tickets to the championship finals for this season, but heck, what a way to build up the rest of your roster and get some really high level big game experience, because every team here is a real contender.
And that's it. We're not necessarily counting them out, just noting that there are some limitations from the submitted roster. And Benji, bottom of this pool, the lowest qualifying and 4th team.
It's Mosquitoes out of Austria, based in Klosterneuburg, which is just outside Vienna. I think there was probably a bit more buzz around some of the other Austrian talent last year, thinking about catch-up specifically in this division. But with generally quite a young roster, they've made that step up into the competition here. Can they solidify that performance? Was it, quote-unquote, a one-hit wonder? Or were they for real? I think it's interesting. Certainly, again, maybe a little bit like Puke. They don't have big names, but they, in terms of fit and dynamics, they seemed like a well-drilled, well-organized squad where they were well-drilled, I think you say.
Hannah, any insights on what Mosquitoes will bring?
I've not had a chance to watch any Mosquitoes games, and certainly, obviously, we're still so early on in the tournament, so I'm just excited to see what they can bring, really. And as you say, even without big superstar names, that actually can really bring an interesting dynamic, because if you don't know who the 7 players are across from you, and you don't know what their style is necessarily going to be, and the way they're going to work together and have cohesion, sometimes it can actually be to the defense's advantage when you have those superstars, because you know what those players like to do and you're going to take away their option A. So it will be perhaps about adjustability and how quickly you can do the clipboard adjustments for people who are facing off against Mosquitoes.
I probably heard more about Mosquitoes than I ever had last weekend while in Vienna, seeing the under-24 teams and a lot of Austrian teams that had some pickups and some changeovers. And that's about as much as I know about them, too. I know they finished 10th place at EUCF last year, and because of a few not attending here at the Elite Invite, they got bumped up into that 8th position. So excited to see what they bring. Let's go check out Pool B in the mixed division.
I think, kind of maybe not unlike some of the other divisions, one pool feels stronger than the other. We'll start at the top of this pool with Reading, who came agonizingly short last year in kind of heartbreaking fashion. But even with Bex Palmer gone, are they better than last year? You've got key pickups coming in like Becky Thompson and Molly Wedge. Like, this Reading side, especially if we mentioned GRUT are not necessarily at full form, could this be them ascending back to the top of European Ultimate?
There's definitely a case for it. Hannah, what's your take on Reading this year?
I see a lot of female matching players who are really, really good at defense and good at creating themselves some opportunities. What I don't see is an influx of really big defensive male matching sort of beasts on this squad. There are a couple of people who are very, very good at playing defense. Don't get me wrong. But I think in terms of, it's not the longest roster in the world, and certainly there's a lot of O talent, but I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to really generate blocks as much. But, I'm putting the challenge out there, not trying to smirch anyone on the roster, but I feel like maybe against teams with bigger, stronger defensive lines, they might have a little bit of a tussle, but we'll see what happens.
We will indeed. The notable inclusions there, as close as they were last year. I'm really looking forward to seeing them. For my money, this should be the team that pushes GRUT the most. But that we will see as this tournament goes, and I guess you'll get our true opinions at the end of the show, and if you stick around as a patron. Benji, let's work our way down this list.
Disconnection, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Lemmings. If you're from that part of the UK, you're strongly rooting for the Germans to make the final this weekend. The question for me is, obviously they've got some big names at the top of the roster, but you can't do it on the back of one or two players. Can they get contributions from all the way over the roster?
I do have to ask a point of clarification because I wasn't in Padova, and just to check for my understanding, is that the Alex Snyder?
I believe in Padova, the Alex Snyder was not there, but there was note that the Alex Snyder was on their roster.
And of
And
course,
that is
for
a
those
very
who
good eye, Hannah, to notice that right at the
and for
top.
those that don't know who the Alex Snyder is, Stefan, please do give a quick brief CV.
Well, Alex Snyder, my brief CV is a multi-time women's champion in the USA Ultimate as captain or leader of Fury. Am I right here? Or now I'm questioning myself. I thought the Alex Snyder originated in Vancouver and then moved down to the west coast of the U.S. But now we might need to do a little bit more homework on the Alex Snyder. The name I
Well,
know, and
you should
Hannah.
back yourself. You should back yourself. Indeed, from Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, a Masters age player now, but certainly someone who can probably still rinse you enough on the field. Yeah, she's actually a USAU Hall of Famer. They list her as the consummate teammate, leader, and competitor. So watch out, everyone. And yeah, it was indeed. She was the general of the San Francisco Bay Area with Fury.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad I
there
got that
is
right.
there is a Alex Snyder on the roster. We can say that.
There is a Alex Snyder. Otherwise, they were quite impressive in Padova. They came back to take that game away from the Lemmings. The big fella, their captain Arne Gross, played a very big part in that game and that whole tournament. We saw them on stream 2 or 3 times, and he was a big impact player. As was, do they have the shirt numbers? Where's the 54? There it is. 54 shirt, Magdalena Frey. She had an excellent game and tournament as well for them as a uh, reset, every other toucher. Not necessarily a reset handler, but she touched the disc so much you kind of got that feeling. But she was just the capital distributor for the team and really made their offense click.
Let's move on to the second UK team in this pool. You may realise that there are 3 UK teams in the mixed division here at Elite Invite, and there's a fourth who's going to be watching exceedingly closely, of course, as we mentioned, with Lemmings keeping an eye on Disconnection. With Smog, I think the question is always going to be, how do they translate home dominance into success offshore? Because they've won UK Nationals for a good few years running now, but for whatever reason, as soon as they leave this sceptred isle, it just doesn't quite work for them. And for whatever reason, it's been a few seasons now, and I think the fact that they've got a bit of a hoodoo about it is kind of become the narrative around them.
Possibly one of the ways in which Smog attained higher success in the international stage is maybe just by bringing one team. There have been seasons where they've obviously had their second team, and it's been, I know, a real kind of matter of pride for Smog as a club to be able to have 2 teams qualifying for things like the World Championships. And they've certainly seemed to have taken the approach of, rather than really just top loading that first team and sort of, saying to the second team, well, you all are going to do something different. I think actually, maybe just solidifying to one. Obviously, they've only got one entered into the Elite Invite. So in terms of looking at their roster, again, a little bit of fresh talent coming in. Some of their longer standing players. You've got, of course, we mentioned Becky Thompson for Reading Ultimate. Of course, Helen Thompson is one of the key pieces for Smog. So it'd be lovely to see both twins at the tournament. Maybe we get them matching off against each other at some point. Who knows? But yeah, this one looks like a decently talented squad. There are a couple of faces that I don't recognise. But yeah, it would be nice to see them come out and see what they can do.
Yeah, looking forward to the same. I still remember the EUCF 2 years ago, I believe, where Smog 2 outplaced Smog 1, which was, as you say, Hannah, maybe a downfall. So a consolidation might be what they need into these top end tournaments to really be able to shine outside of the UK.
Obviously, there's still the EUCF bid there, but maybe the fact that they have a little bit of wiggle room, right? It's an early season tournament. The pressure's off a little bit. Maybe that helps them flourish. Who knows?
May do. And the last team in the second group of the mixed division, Benji.
Yes, it is another French team that you alluded to earlier, the newly crowned French mixed champions, Sesquidistus, featuring stars from kind of all over the divisions previously. Guy Alonsoland, fresh off that semi-finals place at Worlds last year with Mooncatchers, back where he belongs in the mixed division. Everyone's favourite photographer, John Kofi. Pauline Batte, who was excellent at the World Games. And some guy called Nasser Mbaye Vogel. Ring any
Never
bells?
heard of him. Did he just start?
Must be some young up and comer. Like
Teenager.
Sesquidistus has the talent. There's no doubt about it.
Can we possibly say that maybe they might be one of the most dramatically underseeded teams we've seen in quite a while?
Yeah, I think that's very easy to say. I mean, great notations there, Benji, with all those players. Pauline Berthet coming over from Monkey, but what she did at World Games was huge. Their captain, Isno Tessier, Gwen Tessier, a superb ultimate mind who is just super calm under pressure, exceptional distributor. You've got Justine Groot, who's part of the French mixed team this year, who is another one who just is putting in at every level. And this team, yes, understatement of the year. Hannah, pardon my microphone. Understatement of the year that they are underseeded right now.
Yeah, I think that's because
We've got lots of year left to have other understatements.
Yes.
I think this is because they weren't at EUCF last year, so it means that they probably don't get the seeding that on paper they potentially deserve. All of it means that Pool B could be a bit of a bloodbath. Didn't realise that's what the B stood for, but there you go.
And of course, the last thing about them, they were finalists in the Elite Invite last year, where Goyota did take the mixed division. Excellent.